So now we're going to create a report named Contract Summary. So this report shows information on selected contracts. This report will encompass all 4 parts of the standard reporting, and then we'll use a parameter, use of a parameter, and also the inclusion of adjacent columns with the Office Connector functions. So again, we'll call it Contract Summary. And now we're going to put in an input prompt, and we'll call it contract. And this will be the contract number that will be used for developing this report. So I'm going to format that right away and make it a data entry. And then when there's a lot of parameters that are text type, like account number, job number, and the same contract number, which if we leave the cell formatted normally, Excel might try to interpret that number as a date, or like if I put in 03, which is my contract number, it'll try to interpret it as a number and drop that leading 0. So what I'm going to do, because the contract number, that 0 needs to be at the start, I'm going to go ahead and just format it as text. Now I can't put a formula in a column that's, or a cell that's been formatted as text, but in this case it's fine because it's an input value. And the contract I'm going to use is this contract. And then another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave it on cell B3, and I'm going to give this a named value. I'm going to name this cell just free. It would be easier for us as we're developing along. So instead of referring to cell B3, I can just refer to contract ID. So just basically a shortcut. Okay. Okay, and then in cell C3, I am going to put, what is going to go in here? More information on the contract. And to do this, we're going to use a lookup wizard. And I'm going to click here. And the lookup wizard. And so I'm going to look up at CN contract. And I want the active contract. Notice you'll see CN contract here twice. You may see that again, especially with current history and new files. So you just want to make sure that you look at the file description and you're selecting the correct one. We want an active contract. So I'm going to click next. Now with a lookup, you remember that gold key I told you about, making it a primary key? Well, when you use a lookup, you must specify the primary key values. So in this case, there's only the contract ID, but if it was if you were doing, let's say, the JC category, you would need all 4 keys to make this function work, which all 4 fields, I'm sorry, would make it up, which is the job, extra, cost code category. In this case, it's just the contract, and which is in cell B3. Now I could type B3 here if I wanted to. That would be acceptable. We can also do what I named it contract ID. And now it's going to give me the available fields that I can pull from here. And so here I'm going to check the description, and then I'm going to click Finish. And there we have our first lookup function, TS lookup. Okay. And so in cell A4, I'm going to type in our customer. And in this case, I'm going to find it. I'm going to use a find wizard. Now, find basically returns a value from a field, just like the lookup. But with the find, you don't need to know the primary key. So the vendor, or in this case, the customer, will find it in the contract item fields table. Let me find that one. Just saw it too. There it is. Again, make sure I put active, and I want to find the customer. So this time it's asking me, where is the customer? There it is. And then we'll click next. And so instead of asking me for the primary key, it's going to ask me to apply conditions to the rows to limit them or to include them, depending on how you look at it. So in this case, I have the contract number, and it's cell ref, and it's going to be equal to, again, the value types. I forgot to go over this. So with our functions, there are two value types. You have cell reference or literal. The literal, once you put it in, it will continue to be used that way the entire time. Or cell reference means that it's going to point to a different cell and use that value in that cell. So in this case, we're going to do a cell reference, and notice that the contract ID is now in this drop-down list. Any named field that we have on this sheet will be applied into this list of cell references or within the report. Okay, and then I'm going to click next, and then I'm going to find the first. I want to return the first match that it found. So for example, the conditions that you apply to the record, the resulting records could have been more than one. In this case, there's multiple contract items. I don't know, maybe 5 items off the top of my head, and they all point to the same customer because of the contract in this case. So we're just going to use the contract. We're just going to return the first one. But you have the option of returning the first one and the last one by the wizard. And I'll show you how to return a specific matching one, which normally doesn't apply to our report designs, but if you need it, we'll show you how to do that. So our customer is TC, and then to show you that function, I'm going to pull it up in the insert function here, and this is going to go more into depth on what was produced, which is the TS find function. What it produced for its arguments, and an argument is being comma separated, the table name that we were using. The next value that you'll see is what record or what a field we wanted to return. In this case, it's the customer. And then there's a filter. This is what applies to all of the rows that are returned. In this case, it's the contract is equal to that one in the contract ID. And then the offset. And so this is what I was talking about. The first or the last match, or the whatever record you wanted to return within the result. So really quickly, 0 is the first one, -1 is the last one that it finds, and then you can start going from 0. So if I go 2, it still returns TC. 3, 4, this will eventually tell me how many there are. I'm not going to keep going, but they're all TC. But there is certain conditions sometimes where you may want to change the offset. And a good example of that is that, remember the launchpad I popped up at the beginning of the class? There's one in there called TS Write payroll employees. Basically, it generates all of the information from the employees based on the TS find function with the offset, and then it uses the spinner control to change the offset. So it's kind of neat looking. You may want to look into that later. Okay, I'm gonna click OK. And then what we'll do is we're going to use another lookup to bring in the vendor name, city, state, and telephone. Okay. So I'll show you. I'm going to do a lookup. And then in this case, our customer is an AR customer. I just want the AR customer record. Again, it wants me to define the primary key because I'm using a lookup. We know that there's only one. It's the customer ID. Actually, I should have called this customer ID. And now we can do it. So we're going to name city, state. Do we want zip? No. Telephone. And then I'm going to click finish. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it, starting with port line. I'm going to do a paste special. I'm going to do all. I'm going to do a transpose. So it just copies it down. And then, okay, we'll use a draw number as well. So an A5, we'll call it current draw. Oh, okay. And then, I'm sorry, I just do another lookup. And then we'll go to contract derived. We're going to get the last draw number. Contract derived. There we go. And the contract, again, is contract ID. And then the field is, I'm going to do a find on last draw. Select that and click finish. And then we're just going to space that out a little bit so it looks prettier. And then we'll M5, we'll call this one last draw. Very important that we save in as you go along. Looks like I haven't saved this at all. Over the, I'm going to save that because I think my other one saved. That I should really enforce that what I just said. As you're designing your report, continue to continue to save. It's not uncommon for something weird to happen where Excel will crash the workbook, especially playing with all these data connections as you're designing. And what it will attempt to do is recover your workbook. Don't ever use a recovered workbook to continue working with. Close that, get rid of it, and start from the last saved. I've seen too many weird things happen with a recovered workbook with Office Connector.